welcome you all to tonight's session. It's sponsored by the Tupper Lake Free Press and by Stuart Amel's Property Rights Group. If you go on Facebook and look for Stuart's picture, all his property rights people are there. It was actually Stuart who suggested we do this, and I've done them before in the past. I always think they're a good idea. I'd like to thank our candidates in advance for doing this. It's not an easy thing to do, to come before a group of people and explain your hopes and dreams. I want tonight's presentation to be very positive. It's all about ideas. It's all about moving us forward in a very positive direction to make Tupper Lake the place we want it to be. In the interest of full transparency, I want to tell you that I forgot to speak on that. I forgot to capture myself on. Oh wow, that's nasty. Used to carry a big Nikon camera and a big notebook. Now I just have this silly little thing. In the interest of full transparency, I'd like to tell you that the folks at our table here have had the questions in advance. They're not difficult questions, but they're just general questions. Stu and I thought that the comments we'd like to hear tonight are things people have thought about rather than just off the top of their head. We don't need those kinds of things. What we're going to do is we're going to rotate back and forth. We'll start on one side and we'll start on the other, and then we'll go to one side and back, so that no one goes first, no one goes last. So, Stuart, is there anything we need to add here? So without further ado, I guess we'll move on. Each part it's a 5-part program. We want to wrap this up in an hour and a half, because I haven't had dinner yet. The first question is, well, first of all, I should introduce our guests. We have Councilwomen Tracy Luton and Mary Fontana. They've served for 4 years. 4 years, Rose? 4 years. 4 years. On our left side, it's appropriate for Democrats to be on the left, we've got former town supervisor Dean LaFave, and we have his running mate, very capable running mate, Daniel Booney Carmichael. So our first 3-minute slot is going to be introduction of each of the candidates by themselves, a little bit about themselves, and we'll begin with Mr. LaFave.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone who's here this evening for showing up. I was born, brought up in Tupper Lake. I graduated from Tupper Lake High School in 1970, North Country Community College in 1972. I then attended Plattsburgh State. Following that, I had a position with the Village of Tupper Lake for over 24 years, senior clerk, deputy clerk administrator, village treasurer, president of the village CSEA, treasurer of the village CSEA. I also served on the Tupper Lake Central School District School Board for about 4.5 years. I was town supervisor for just short of 18 years. I was the co-founder of the Adirondack Association of Towns and Villages, which will be 27 years old this coming January. That is the most influential organization. And that's been told to me by every environmental group in this state. They have a lot of influence because it is made up solely of elected officials whose townships are either wholly or partially within the Adirondack Park. Also, in 1998, following the loss of the prison, I worked with 2 other people and was one of 3 of the original co-founders of the Wild Center. During my tenure as town supervisor, I appointed a committee called Save Sunmount. Through that, Sunmount was prevented from closing, and we were able to get the SITs. I know there's people pro-con on the SITs. It meant jobs for Tupper Lake. And of course, during my tenure, we made the most major improvements to the Tupper Lake Golf Course. I don't know how far back you'd have to go to find more improvements than that. We did it by working in conjunction with the country club board, the golfers, and we were able to really do a great job. So also, one final thing. We took over 400 homes off septic that were leaching in to Lake Simon, Big Tupper Lake, the Racket River, and Little Wolf Lake. 400 homes. We put them on municipal sewer. That to me is another good thing for this community.
About 5 more seconds, Steve.
Okay, the Racket Pond walkway was done under my administration as well.
Thank you.
Ladies? Tracy?
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Can you guys hear me? I'm originally from Central Square, New York. I moved to Saranac Lake in 1996. I decided to move to Tupper Lake in 1997, where I call Tupper Lake my home. I moved here and I raised my 3 beautiful children, Paige, Amy, and Shannon. I have been involved in the community ever since, from being a cheerleader mom to being a t-ball coach to being everything involved in like being a Girl Scout leader to everything. Tupper Lake welcomed me with open arms with my kids. I raised my kids as a single mom. I bought a house here. I have worked with Dr. Maroon, who was my best supporter here. He taught me how to be a dental assistant, taught me how to be just a great person. He's a great guy. He also, I brought him into retirement back in 2014, 2015, where then a new office was opened up, and then I became the office manager, went back to school, and now I'm the office manager at Tupper Lake Family Dental, and I run that place, and we are doing very well there. And I love Tupper Lake, and I think it's a great place to be. I'm a veteran of the United States Navy. I am the commander at the VFW here, Post 3120. I am first vice at the AMVETS, 710. And I've been in the Honor Guard, I would say probably 9 years. And that's probably my best thing I love to do. I love being here for the veterans and being there when they pass and being there for their families. I was asked to be on the town board 4 years ago. I was hesitant at first because I truly didn't know a lot about politics and how it all ran. One thing I knew was that Tupper Lake was a great place to be. The community rallies around each other when things fail. They rally around each other when things are negative, positive, and you know, they discuss a lot of things and they want things to happen and they want Tupper to prosper no matter what. So I decided I'll give it a try. I was undecisive about running this last term. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do it. Then I said, you know what? I learned a lot and I really decided that, you know, I'm going to give it another shot. So my thing that I want to do now is stay on for another 4 years and make sure that Tupper Lake stays positive and we grow. And that we have the community and the tourism and have everything, our golf course, our uptown, our downtown, everything, you know, just keep growing and have positive things go on. I've been on a positive board. Our board does not fight, we don't argue, we all get along, and our committees get along. So that's, you know, why I'm running again. And I'm a graduate from Monroe Community College, and I'm done.
Finish up.
And I'm proud to be a Tupper Laker now.
Good for you, Tracy. Mr. Carmichael?
I believe I know pretty much everybody here. Most of you know me. My name is Daniel Carmichael. I'm called Booney. My mother gave me that nickname from Daniel Boone, and that's how that came about. Born and raised here, owned small businesses at different times here, so I'm familiar with the difficulties of being a small business in New York State. I believe that the town, one of the biggest emphasis that the town should do is to support small businesses. And I actually didn't want to run. This is my 3rd time running. I'm a 2-time loser. I ran for mayor, and then 2 years ago I ran for the town council. Mostly because somebody asked to do it. Our 2 opponents ran unopposed last time, and it almost looked like they were going to run unopposed again this time, and I just couldn't see it. So it didn't take too much persuasion, and the local committee persuaded me to run again. I think that boards can get stale, and I think that change is good in a lot of different things, but I also believe my primary interest now is to make our town government more transparent. Years ago, the town and village board meetings were broadcast over the local cable system, which was Adelphia at the time. I don't know when it ended or why, but I believe it should be started again. And I think that you can get state grant money from the State Department of Recreations and Parks. I have been making phone calls for the last couple of years, but I have no standing. I call these different groups and they say, what are you? And I'm a private citizen. Well, we don't have to give you any information. But when I get on the town board, I'm gonna be able to call up and say, I'm a town board member in Tupper Lake, and either you give me the information over the phone or I will drive down to Albany and get it myself. Tupper Lake's future has looked pretty bleak, except for the last couple of years. It's nice to see new businesses opening up on the main street. I'm a firm believer that the Adirondack Club Resort's going to come to fruition. It may not be by the original developers, but somebody's going to develop that. And Tupper Lake will be a booming time. I'm done?
Yeah, well,
I can talk forever. I'm done.
that's why we have time.
There you go.
Mary Fontana?
Good evening, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mary Fontana, and I'm your incumbent town councilwoman. I may not be your local politician or your stereotypical local politician, and despite my public position, I don't like to talk about myself in front of groups. That being said, I'm a local Saranac Laker, born and raised there, and 12 years ago I moved here to Tupper Lake. So I'm not a native, but I'm certainly a local. I work right here on Park Street at One Group Insurance. I specialize in personal insurance and risk management. I ran for the town board 4 years ago, and like Tracy, I was approached and asked to run. I had previously ran for a position of Tupper Lake, the coroner position, but I was a write-in vote, so it was my first political jump. And following that, I realized, maybe I need to invest myself a little bit more in Tupper Lake. I moved here 12 years ago. I was still a teenager. I was pursuing my education. I got my bachelor's degree. I started my career. I started a family here, and I realized that this is the place I want to live, and this is the community I want to raise my child in. So I feel it's important. I'm now a stakeholder of Tupper Lake. I want to make this community great. And being on the board has afforded me so many opportunities. I get to cast a vote. I get to have a say. I get to attend meetings like this. I get to communicate with the public. And I'm just very grateful to have been an elected official. And like Booney said, it's not in the nature of politics for somebody to run continuously unopposed. So I'm grateful this year for the opportunity, and I welcome the challenge and to hear their viewpoints and to see what they can offer Tupper Lake. I think that our board has done some phenomenal things for Tupper Lake. I think that we are constantly making strides towards bringing more tourism to Tupper Lake, to promoting our community, to the development of the webpage, to promoting the APO. We have the beach, we have the golf course. Tupper Lake has so many assets, and I think as a board so far we've done a tremendous job in promoting those assets and allotting funds to them, and I just think that we can do great work, and I hope to continue to remain on the board and be re-elected and continue the great work that we're doing.
Thank you, Mayor. With the exception of Katie Stewart, I think everybody in this room would like to say 12 years ago they were a teenager. Maybe I wouldn't want to go back there. The economy of Tupper Lake, of course, we know the meat and potatoes of Tupper Lake is Sunmount, but the piece that we can control is tourism, and we've seen some great initiatives on that level. Next question, as a town leader, what would you do to promote tourism, and what would you support, what projects would you support to improve it? We're going to start with, who did we start with last time?
Dean, I believe, started.
I started first, Jess.
Okay, you want to start, Mary?
Sure. Might as
You
well
could
keep
talk
going.
2 things in a row, or you
Yeah,
can...
no, the first one's out, so I'm more comfortable now, you know? Like I said, it's hard to speak in front of the public, even as an elected official. So I like to start by saying that tourism is cornerstone to the Adirondacks, and especially Tupper Lake. In the past few years, Tupper Lake has grown, thanks in large part to the Wild Center, but also to the great relationship and the contract we have with Roos. And thank you for bringing Katie up, because I know she works for Roos, and they've done a wonderful job in helping to promote Tupper Lake. We get monthly updates from Roos on what projects they're doing for Tupper Lake and what we can do to help with those projects and to promote Tupper Lake. As elected officials, it's our goal to improve our economy, our infrastructure, our employment, our branding, and through our contract with Roos, we've been able to promote those things. I got some numbers today that TupperLake.com has seen 294,000 sessions. The hiking page is up 30% from last year. The triad page is up 130%. And the Facebook page has about 34,000 followers. Now, that is a huge improvement, and that tells us that people are looking at Tupper Lake, and people want to come here. And it's our job as elected officials to invest in our society and invest in our community. Our existing board has unanimously supported the construction and development of the travel corridor. We continue to support the development of our cross-country ski trail, the beach, the park. We actively seek grants that afford us additional capital to invest in the town. We've developed a wonderful relationship with Melissa McManus, who's a great advisor and aid in the pursuance and the issuance of our grants. And just in our communications with the public and again with Roost, we have just been able to push forward and get the word out there that Tupper Lake is the place to be. And it's a great place to live.
Thank you. Booney?
When I was a little boy, there was actually 2 industries in Tupper Lake. The VA hospital, which later became Sunmount, and tourism, along with logging. But the tourism was very active. When Big Tupper was open, the winters were flourishing in town. A couple bad winters, they had no snowmaking. There was a couple bad winters. People forget how well Big Tupper treated the people of Tupper Lake. When Arise had the volunteers, I was running a local restaurant, and immediately our sales went up 60% when they were open. Tom Lawson, heart and soul, was into building that mountain. Unfortunately, I think he ran out of money. The environmentalists subjected to him what one of the locals referred to as death by 1,000 cuts. They wanted to run him out of money, and they were successful. His heart was in opening Big Tupper, but he couldn't do it without the money. The volunteers did the work, but he supplied the capital for it. I'm sure it's going to open again, and the town and village have to be prepared for the influx of the businesses and the new residents who will come here because of that. Right now, golf worldwide is in a deep depression. It's the lowest it's been since right after World War II. I'm not sure what the membership numbers for Tupper Lake Golf Club were this year, but last year it was less than 100 full members. When I worked for Brent Smith in a pro shop, I tracked the membership, and it was well over 300. Well, if you only have 20% of the membership, something's got to give. So I'm a firm believer that the town has to get the maximum profitability out of every bit of real estate it owns. They have to research everything for the beach, the country club. We have a hidden gem up there in the cross-country trails, and I love it. When I was younger, I was very an avid cross-country skier, and I wish I still could be. I spoke recently to some of the principals in the cross-country courses and said that what would be really wonderful if they could have trails around the perimeter of the entire course, or at least the upper 9, and they agreed. But I also think that there should be some place in the winter for the cross-country skiers to warm up and get a bite to eat. If the town's gonna be in the entertainment business, they may have to take the lead on that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Booney. Tracy?
Well, one of the things about Great Tupper Lake is that we do have tourism here. I mean, we have mountains, we have the Bio Center, we have Triad, we have Park Street, we have camping, we have hiking, we have cross country, we have the golf course, we got the campground, we got Rod and Gun Club. I mean, and the golf course. I mean, that place up there is a gem, I think. I mean, I don't golf per se, but they have fundraisers for everything in Tupper Lake. I mean, for every scholarship there is going on, for past and present people that lived here. I mean, that place is packed all the time. So I think the golf course is out of the red right now, they're in the black. So they did make money this year. And that place, anybody that comes into town, my family per se, that go up there and golf, it's beautiful, it's a gem. And also with Big Tupper on the Arise, I worked up there, I volunteered, my kids were little, I was behind there every weekend going up there. I think Big Tupper would be a great asset to Tupper Lake. I wish it was still running. I wish it was still here. We're missing out on a couple of generations of kids not being able to ski. I wish, you know, something would happen. I wish it wasn't taking 20 years for it to come into play, because now 2 of my kids don't live here and they're missing out on it. Camping at the beach, it's always full. We're turning away people left and right to go camping because there's no room. I mean, again, I'm gonna say it, my family comes up, they gotta camp in my backyard because there's no place for them to camp. Blue Jay's full, so I think if, you know, tourism, I think, is going really well. Roost is definitely doing an amazing job with advertising, showing off Tupper Lake. Park Street is great, I mean, with the new Adirondack store, and kudos to Spruce and Hemlock. That place is great. Every time I go in there, I see people I don't know, so they're coming in from all over the place shopping and spending their money here. And I would love to see more snowmobiles come into town. I would love to see a snowmobile trail along with other people that want to ride their bikes and do whatever on trails. I mean, why not? I mean, it's a great place to be. And we do have grants coming in, and everybody says, well, grants are taxpayers' money. Well, we're taxpayers, so I'd rather have grant money come to Tupper Lake than go downstate or go someplace else. So I'd rather apply for a grant and get the money to come to Tupper Lake, whether we have a rail or a trail or just a trail or whatever. But it would be nice to see that money come to us. If they got $50,000 to give away, give it to us. We'll spend that money wisely and we'll get something into Tupper Lake. And grants need to be applied for and they need to be spent. And if they're going to give us a grant to do something, let's plan it here in Tupper Lake.
10 seconds.
That's it?
10 seconds.
Well, then I'm done.
Always a taskmaster. Dino?
I was going to talk about the artists in Tupper Lake.
Well, I think I pretty much agree with what everybody said here. We're all talking about the rail trail, and I think that's going to be a big asset to Tupper Lake. I personally know that trail can be expanded, and shortly my running mate and I will be putting forth a map showing where additional trails can be built off from the main rail bed,
I've seen
the main trail. That's one thing. When it comes to the golf course, let's make it perfectly clear. I'm not running to try to sell the golf course. I've been down that road years ago when people were talking about selling it, and no. I can promise every golfer I'll never never touched that with a 10-foot pole. The golf course is a great asset to Tupper Lake. And we need to use that asset. As far as skiing, Big Tupper, I agree with Booney. I think Tom Lawson came to town. His heart was in the project. He wanted to get the mountain open. Engineering fees, legal fees, environmentalists, next thing you know, the guy's broke. They did it with Glen Eagles and they gave us a permit. Glen Eagles never even got the permit. They walked away before they broke them. But I've never understood, and I'm being honest here, why no one approached Tom Lawson, maybe they did, for the municipalities in conjunction with him to go after some grant money to get the mountain open first. That's feasible. The governor's handing out $10 million to Cernak Lake. They didn't even have a plan for it when they got awarded the money. Why couldn't we have done that? Well, we didn't. But maybe we could think about that in the future. Pretty much that's about it. I don't, I agree with the tourism. I think we need to do that. I think the trail is the biggest issue. I don't want to see us behind the 8 ball on the trail. I think we need to be out in front. I need to be talking to our neighboring towns, Santa Clara, Harrietstown, North Elba, and all work in conjunction to make the trail even better than what's being proposed. If 4 townships applied for grants, your chances of getting the money are far greater than just one. So, and that's about all I have to say on tourism. I was a co-founder of the Wild Center, which is probably the biggest asset right now in Tupper Lake as far as tourism.
Gotta tell you, Stuart's been cutting everybody short, I tell you. You give a guy a job, and just, things are going well. Our next question is about transparency. There's been some discussion at past board meetings about the need to improve transparency. So my question to the candidates is, how would you improve transparency in the workings of the town government, and how would you better communicate with all taxpayers? 5 minutes. Stuart's going to give you the full 5 this time. I guess we're back to Booney.
As anybody who's read the last few issues of the Free Press and some issues of the Adirondack Daily Enterprise, they'll know that I've had a problem with the current board with their lack of transparency. I have foiled repeatedly different issues and have been stonewalled. There's no other way to say it. I've been stonewalled. To this day, I haven't got answers to questions. Various excuses have been given. It fell by the wayside, or it was just a misunderstanding. No matter what it was, I haven't gotten the answers. My biggest complaint about the current board, I believe, is they make every situation into an adversarial relationship. One example is the Klims with their sidewalk. They are asking for something that they are entitled to. They're not asking for something they desire. The state says it has to be provided to them. And they get met with something that the wheels of government turn slowly. Well, if the state mandates that it's done, then let's get it done. The other thing is this new zoning. I'm very pleased to be a member of Protecting Your Property Rights group on Facebook, started by Stuart Amill. The last I knew, there was close to 500 members. One of their issues was RVs at people's homes and on their lots. Well, if they take away the RVs this year, next year are they going to take away pickup trucks? Are they going to take away tents for kids in the backyard? There has to be an end to it. There's too much government interfering with our rights now. Then we don't need any new stuff. We should be promoting small businesses. New York State is number 50 in how small businesses are treated. They don't need any help from the town of Tupper Lake to make it harder. I would really love to have a list of the small businesses over the 25 years that were begun and went out of business in town. We should be actively trying to get the small businesses. More restaurants, more gift shops. We desperately need hotels and motels. Thank God those people are getting their own financing. But we have to go after Billy Jones. We have to go after, who's our Betty Little, and have them. They're spending $100 million right now to redo Mount Van Hogansburg over in Lake Placid. Why don't they give them 80, give 10 million? Oh, they did give 10 million to Saranac. We'll give 10 million to Tupper and 10 million to Long Lake. They just seem to think if they give money to Lake Placid, it helps everybody in the Adirondacks. It doesn't. I've explained to Ms. Little a number of times. Lake Placid money is Lake Placid money. The only thing that Tupper Lake really ever sees from it is the gas stations as the tourists come here and gas up to get to Lake Placid. Let's go down there and force these politicians to give money to Tupper Lake. That's it.
Tracy, I guess, is it? We're talking about transparency?
Yep. So my view on transparency is that we have a meeting every month, second Thursday of every month. The public's welcome to come. I've been in there 4 years. Probably in the last 4 months of my 4-year term, it started getting a little bit busier. Before that, it was an empty room. So now it's starting to get a little busier because now it's election time. So, and 2 other candidates are running. So I was always asking, I was like, where are all the people? Well, they're not here. They're not really concerned about anything. So now a couple of things are coming along. You know, Stuart, you know, thank goodness had his Facebook page, which I don't really go on to that. But it's bringing more things out of zoning, which I put out zoning, and it made me more active to figure out the zoning. And you have to have zoning. We're not going to get rid of zoning laws. It's not going to go away. And you can have an RV in your lawn. You can have it there, and you can have it winterized, and you can keep it on your property. And you know, I can have somebody come and visit, and you can hook it up there, and it can stay in your yard. I think the zoning, you're going to have to read it, is to say you can't live on a piece of property with your RV there, I think what it says. But it, like Mr. Quinn said at the meeting, it's going to take a while to go through all those zoning properties. I think what it's trying to prevent is that you just can't run amok on your property. And I think none of us want to live next to somebody that's running amok on the property. And if you do, I think you might have to go deeper into some other country. And I've been in those third world countries, and I don't want to live in a third world country. And so I think zoning laws have to be in place, and they have to be organized, and they have to be situated, and they have to be picked apart. So that's my view on zoning, and I'm reading about it more and more. And so transparency, we're seeing more on the internet now thanks to Jim. You know, he's putting it on there, and so you can hear the little arguments, and you can hear the other stuff that we talk about budgeting and all that other stuff. And if we can get it on TV, let's put it on TV. I know we used to be able to do it on TV. I was here back then when it used to be on. But I don't know if Spectrum's going to put us on TV. Let's ask them. I don't care if we're on TV. I'll be on TV. I'll have our meetings on TV, and we'll sit there and we'll talk on TV. If you want to listen to us for 2.5, 3 hours on TV, ain't all that exciting. But if you want to see us on TV, I'll be on TV. If you know, Dan puts it in the paper, Aaron puts it in the paper. As our committees go, you know, the zoning of appeals and the planning board and the board of assets reviews and the water district and the highway and all that, you can get those. You can come in and ask for those. I mean, we got people on those, and the committees, and they're broke down by people. You can't have more than 3 of us on there, or else it's a quorum. So we separate committees into people, and those people all go to places. Like I'm on a committee, she's on a committee, Patty's on a committee, John's on a committee, Mike's on a committee. So you're broke up, and so those committees are done, and there are minutes there. If you want them, they're available. And to do a FOIL, it's going to be specific to a certain thing that you want. And I know it's hard, and I know you get frustrated over that, Booty, and I get that. And you know what? I don't know a lot about those, but I know that, you know, it can be found out your answers that you want. And I know that I've been there 4 years, and I'm not hiding nothing. I'm not hiding anything. I'm an open book. And I think everybody else is too. In this town, and I think the village too. We don't hide anything. And I'll be on TV. That's as far as my transparency goes. That's all I got to say.
I'm sorry, I've lost track. Dean?
Yeah. Everybody kind of touched on some of the same topics here. I don't know, over the years as I've read the board meetings, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of discussion taking place. Whether there is or not, it doesn't seem that way, and I think that is part of the problem with the people wondering what is going on. You know, is there something, are the decisions made before people get to the board table? You know, doesn't seem to be a lot of discussion. As far as the FOIL request and transparency, I think it's pretty simple. If somebody asks how much the addition to the building cost, I think that's a pretty simple question. There should be a pretty simple answer. That building was done over a year ago. I would hope by now people know what it cost. But I too want to see the meetings televised if I'm elected. Tracy, I agree with you on that. I'd also like to see, and I'm not sure this is transparency, but I'd like to see the town board take the initiative of perhaps, when you have an expenditure like that, moving it to a referendum rather than allowing the people to petition. Not everybody knows about the petition. And I think, you know, that would clear things up, because there is a lot of angst in this community about the expenditure for the addition. I know myself, Sean Stewart served on the board with me years ago. The building was handicap accessible. It didn't have an elevator, but we had it so that someone could enter the rear of the building, come in, go up a ramp, the town clerk or the assistant, whoever was upstairs, would come down and deal with that person. $400,000 is a lot of money. But as far as I say, I don't know. And I think there needs to be more transparency as far as responding to these FOIL requests. You know, I hear people, like I say, I've heard Booney, you know, request this 6 months ago, 7 months ago. That's too long to go without receiving any of the information. That's just not right. I'm sorry, that's not right. And I know you're good people, but that's not right. So.
Thank you, Dean. Mary, our final candidate, our last one on this issue.
Sure. I was a bit confused, honestly, when asked about my thoughts on transparency with the board meetings. Our meetings are advertised, they're publicized. We invite the community to attend and participate. They're covered by both the Tupper Lake Press and the Adirondack Daily Enterprise, and now, thanks to Mr. Lanthier, I believe the audio is available on YouTube.
Yes.
If the meetings are to be televised, I'm perfectly happy with that. I don't know that we have the technology or the contract or however that works, that's beyond me, to get them publicized or to get them on TV, but I'm perfectly happy if they are. The meeting minutes are accessible on the webpage, and if anyone needs information, they just need to call or stop by the town hall. You can see Lori, Angie, Paul, Patty, and if they're unavailable, the board members are accessible. I work right here on Park Street. I know Tracy does as well. Our phone numbers and our contact information is available on the website. When it comes to FOIL requests, Booney, I can't speak to the information you've received or you haven't. And I apologize if there's been a holdup in any way. I have full faith in Lori and the employees of the town to provide the information you're requesting if the FOIL request is presented properly. In my history on the board, I can attest that our meetings have been very poorly attended by the public. And when it comes to the building, we had a public hearing. It was in the paper. We had meeting after meeting after meeting. It was in the paper, please come. We are gonna put an addition on the building. This is what it's gonna cost. It wasn't until construction took place that everyone was, whoa, what are they doing? They're putting this addition on, how much is it gonna cost? And unfortunately, had our meetings been attended and we would have been able to have a discussion and a little back and forth, I feel like it wouldn't have been such a shock. And the sticker price on the building wasn't just for this little addition. There was excavation, there was prevailing wage, the building was handicap accessible. Whenever you take on a project like this for a municipal building, it has to be ADA compliant. And to do so requires, it requires a lot of work, and it required a lot of excavation. The building was quite old. And we wanted our residents to be able to come in and pay their taxes and to talk to Lori. And if you were in a wheelchair, we didn't want you to have to go to the downstairs entrance in the court and have to have Lori Fuller come down, walk down those steep stairs to meet you downstairs. Regardless of your, your ambulatory status, you should be able to go in like everyone else and pay your taxes and ask your questions. And that was part of the reason that the addition did cost so much. And I would stand by it again, I would vote for it again, and I know that the sticker price can, it shocks some people, but there is still grant money coming in, and we did receive grant funding for a portion of that, So, again, I don't feel that as a board we're opaque in any way. We encourage residents to attend our meetings, participate, give feedback. If you're unable to attend our meetings, we can all be reached by phone or by email. Again, stop in the office or just go right on tupperlake.com. My phone number is on the website, and if you give me a call, I will answer your questions to the best of my ability or refer you to someone who can answer them if I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Our next question, consolidation has raised its head in the community again. The town hosted Supervisor Patty and the town hosted a open forum at the high school in recent months. And there's a couple of issues, coterminous governments and the dissolution of the government. Now these are village issues, but as town board members, we'd like to know how you would react to consolidation of one form or another, because obviously if a consolidation does occur at the behest of the village, there's a lot more work for the town to embrace. I think we begin with, I forgot.
I don't know.
I think we'll start with Dean. I think we're almost back to where we were.
On consolidation,
On consolidation.
went down that road years ago with the village. We had a plan. I worked with Marvin Bedore. I was appointed by the town board. Marvin was appointed by the village board. We went through the budgets. We went through employment, everything else. No one was going to lose a job. It is a village issue, but the village board was, at that time, seemed, okay, let's move ahead, let's see what we can do. Well, it went nowhere. At the time, a village resident, had we consolidated, year one would have saved approximately $800 on an average home. The town taxes would have gone up probably $100 and some bucks for the town people. At that time, the plan was, and then years later, Roger Amell and the town board sent something to the village, which they never read, because I called them one day and asked why these comments were going around town, and they said, what do you mean? I said, well, the town board sent you their plan. The employees, nobody was losing a job, their insurance was going to be hundreds of dollars a month cheaper than what they were paying at the village. But it's a village issue. And to be honest with you, until the village of Tupper Lake decides that they want to look into this, really look into it, I think the town board should stay hands off. That's my opinion.
Mary.
Sure. So the topic of village and town consolidation has been broached numerous times, I know, in Tupper Lake's history, and most recently by one of the village board members. So I believe it was in July, the town and village hosted an information session, and we hosted the Department of State. And a lot of the conversation and the discussion at this session was dissolution oriented. And I feel that because of that, some people might have felt a little bit defensive. And I think the reason the conversation was so dissolution oriented was because the studies that have been completed by the Department of State and in New York were for municipalities that followed through with the study, and the result of the study was dissolution. So that's really the only information we have to go off of, and so that's those are the only examples that we can use. In order to eliminate one of the bodies of government, we first need to discover if it's beneficial to the taxpayer to do so. It's not about control, it's not about territory, it's about the taxpayer. Is it going to save tax dollars? The only way to get this information is to do the study. So I know that the study can be expensive, sure, but the benefit of doing a study can be invaluable. So if the study shows us that, look, dissolution or consolidation, it might not be in the best interest of the taxpayer. We can't dissolve one of the bodies of government. But what we can do is consolidate services. So there may be areas where we're overlapping. There may be areas where we have too much expenditure. And this study can give us information where we can say, hey, well, the highway department and the DPW are doing the same job. And they're using manpower, they're doing 15 hours of manpower on this one project, and the DPW is doing 20 hours of manpower, when we can combine and, assign those services to one department and allot those man hours to another. It's not about losing jobs. God forbid if one body did dissolve and we consolidated our local government, the amount of work doesn't change. I know everyone's always concerned about, well, we're gonna lose jobs if we dissolve one body of government. But the amount of work that it takes to maintain this community isn't gonna change. You still need those bodies, you still need those folks to do the job. Now, coterminous government was also brought up. And there is no tax credit for being a coterminous government. And that is a massive undertaking, and it isn't one that I feel personally might work for Tupper Lake. There's only 5 municipalities in New York State that are coterminous, and it's in Albany, Monroe, and Westchester counties. Now, to scale, those are much bigger municipalities than Tupper Lake is. And it's a really big venture, and it's, I don't know that it's for Tupper Lake. Now, again, I feel that the study, regardless of the outcome, would be a huge asset to Tupper Lake, just to find out what it is we have. Look at all these services we offer, and what more can we do for our residents and our constituents. And I think that talking about a reorganization of government is premature until we have the results of the study and we can find out if it's fiscally reasonable for Tupper Lake to reorganize at all.
Thank you, Mary. Daniel?
The consolidation of the village and town, as far as I'm concerned, is a dead horse. The first time I remember hearing about it, I was a junior in high school. And it's been brought up every few years since. It's probably never going to happen until the state of New York mandates it, which I see coming down the road within the next 5 to 10 years. I would be happy just to see the town and village cooperate a little more than what they have been. A couple of years ago, the village board came up with what I thought was a great idea, to purchase the old Rite Aid store, and the older people will refer to it as the old Grand Union store, and have both the town and village offices there. If you've ever been in it, you know the square footage on the ground floor. What people don't know is that there's a full basement with the same square footage with lifts to get to it, so it would have been ADA compliant. The village board was pushing it, and as far as I knew, the town board wanted no part of it, so they decided to throw $400,000 plus into a building that was already ADA compliant. Then they locked themselves into it, because in order for them to get rid of it as surplus, because of their new policy last year of starting bids at the assessed value, I'm assuming the assessment would go up $400,000. It was already assessed for $260,000. I don't know anybody who would start a bid at $660,000 for that building. We're almost tired of hearing about the $400,000 addition, which became kind of a joke around Tupper Lake, and it had a lot of nicknames. My favorite was Patty's Gun Tower for the community garden. It's there now. I guess we're ADA compliant, but I have one little item I'd like to mention, which is kind of ironic, I guess. At the September town board meeting, I went to the back door, and it was deadbolted. So I had to go around to the front, climb a set of stairs, then climb down a set of stairs to get to the town meeting. So they'll spend $400,000 to make a building ADA compliant, but they won't unlock the back door to make their town meeting accessible. It probably was also a fire code. I didn't go over to the fire station, but I was kind of laughed at because I brought that up. Maybe I'm way off base, but we have to coordinate everything between the village and the town. And the village seems to be more open to doing that, and the town seems to be, no, we're gonna do things our way. That has to change.
Thank you, Boone. Tracy?
Well, I don't know what that had to do with consolidation, but we'll go on forward. So we weren't approached with, about being into the Rite Aid building to the day of the vote anyway. So I didn't know about anything about the Rite Aid building being a village and town together thing until the day of the vote of doing the addition to the town. And I think my constituents would agree to that. I don't think Patty knew about it. I don't think Mary knew about it. I don't think John knew about it. I don't think Mike knew about it. And if the village was all about that, they should have came to us prior to all the other open meetings that we had about doing the addition. So as far as sorry, that kind of makes me upset that you were going off on that. But consolidation goes into one government. I've been here 20-something years, and it has been talked about forever. And I do agree. One thing you said, it's like beating a dead horse. When we did the government efficiency study, I agree with Mary that if we're going to go forward, you're going to have to do that to see what's best for Tupper Lake. And should we stay as a town and village? Should we dissolve the village and become a town? Should we go coterminous? I don't know the answer to that, and I don't think anybody sitting here knows the answer to that. And if it's been going on for 30 years or 50 years or whatever it has been, what is the right answer? I certainly don't know, and I don't think anybody sitting here knows the right answer to that. And and if we did go into one and the village dissolved, nobody is going to lose their jobs because everybody's going to need those jobs to fill the village that everybody is doing. We need to look into different departments, and we have to make them, make everything secure and, research everything here and make sure that the town and village do their jobs and we do them right. I don't know if, the study is the right answer. It's $50,000. I pitch in. What's $50,000 amongst 3,000 people to get a study to find out what is best for Tupper Lake? If you're going to take, everybody a little chunk and find out if it's better to be a town instead of a village, is it better to be coterminous? I mean, I got a thing here printed out, like Mary just said, there was 5 people that did it. They're a little bit, down in Rochester and all that stuff. They seem to work out good. There's only 5 coterminous towns in New York State. 5. Do we want to be coterminous? And then it still means somebody's going to be in charge, and somebody's going to have to lose power. Somebody's not going to be able to be, somebody's just going to be town supervisor. Somebody's not going to be able to be mayor, but jobs will change. So I don't know if coterminous is the right answer, but something's going to have to be studied and evaluated to see if that's going to work. So right now, the town and village is going to stay as it is, and it's probably going to be this way long after I'm gone.
Me also.
That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Tracy. Our final question is, why we all came here today is, why should we vote for you folks? Tell us why you're the right person for the job, and tell us what you bring to the table. We're starting with these guys. I think Mary.
Sure.
And Mary, if I'm out of order again, I apologize.
That's okay. I would ask voters to consider me for re-election because I feel it's very important to have the younger generation represented on the board. Building a diverse team is critical to success. I think I'm accessible, I'm still involved in the workforce, and again, I have a stake in the future of Tupper Lake for myself, my family, and my generation. A large portion of the youth here in Tupper Lake, they graduate high school, they go to college, post-college, they don't return. So those folks in my generation that choose to make a life here in Tupper Lake need to become involved in their community, and I feel I'm doing so by sitting here at this table and by seeking re-election. I think that watching the news today, you see a trend of campaign via disparagement. And I think that that is very counterproductive. I think that in order to move forward for Tupper Lake, we have to look to the future of Tupper Lake. We don't need to look back on past decisions and past actions and criticize them. I think that we have to respect one another and give respect to our constituents in order to receive that and to reflect that for our community. We have to find a way to work together to encourage the prosperity in our community. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Booney?
When I'm on the board, there's gonna be total transparency. If somebody calls up and wants a question answered, I will answer, I will find out the answer to the question, I will get back to them. My big thing is fiscal responsibility. I feel that this current board is spending money that my grandson is gonna have to pay back. He's 5 years old. A previous board had the dam sold for $1.6 million. A couple members that are on the board now thought that that was a lowball price and promised to have it assessed or reevaluated. As far as I know, they never did. But now the dam is in dire need of repairs, which the town is on the hook for. If it had been sold 6 years ago, 7 years ago, that company would have been on the hook for it. Nobody to this day has given me one solid reason why we should own that dam. The water level is dictated by the New York State Assembly. The dam was built at the bequest of the Litchfield family and the Whitney family so they could float logs down to what is the municipal park. The level is dictated by the assembly to be between 148.9 feet and 149.9 feet. So the town actually doesn't have any more control over that than if a private company owned it. Since there's no longer camping there, I would just dearly like to know what is the advantage of the town owning it, especially when they had it sold. That's it.
Thank you, Boone. Tracy?
I think I should be reelected because I love Tupper Lake. I support Tupper Lake. I would do everything in my power to make sure that Tupper Lake is secure. I will be at every board meeting I can possibly attend to. I will find out. If you call me and you want an answer, I will do my best to find out for you the best information I can for you. I thrived in Tupper Lake. I've raised my kids here. I think Tupper Lake is a great place. My employment is here. I'm not going anyplace anytime soon. I'm not as young as Mary, but I'm not as old as my constituents over there. But anyway, no pun intended. But I've done well here, and my heart is in Tupper Lake, and I think it's a great place, and we have great assets here, and I don't want to sell off any assets that can make us money or keep us here. And we have great waterways here, and I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. And if you reelect me, I'm going to stay on the board, and I'm going to do my best thing to what's good for the community, and I'm not going to waste taxpayers' money that doesn't need to be wasted. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Our final speaker tonight is Mr. LaFave.
Why I think people should vote for me? I served 22 and a half years in office in Tupper Lake. Made some mistakes, but when you're doing things, that's exactly what you do. You make mistakes. The other thing is, when I first ran, I said, well, there needs to be competition. That's exactly what I thought. So, but since then, I've seen issues that truly do bother me. Mary, a moment ago, adhered to being respectful of constituents. I don't know, the last couple board meetings, one when Booney went there, I read the Enterprise, I read the Free Press. I didn't really find some of the board members to be too respectful. comments were made after the fact when he was done. When the Klims were there, I just read last weekend. You know, you don't laugh at somebody. When you're on a board, you simply don't do that. You may not have wanted it to be mean, but you do not do that. You have to respect the people of the community. I've always done that. People haven't always agreed with me where I stand, but I've always been respectful of everyone. And, you know, we do need to work closer with the village. I don't know when the town knew, but according to the mayor, people knew well in advance. And that basically, the village board was told we want nothing to do with the Rite Aid building. So be it. But we do need to work closer together. The zoning fiasco, that's what I call it. You know, I know it's all right to hold public hearings, but when a board holds a public hearing, whatever you're putting forth before the public is what you want. Anybody tells you they just want your opinion, nah. When you put something forward as a board, that's got your stamp of approval. You may change it, but that's your stamp of approval. That never should have seen the light of day. We're Tupper Lake. We're not Manhattan. You know, we're not Syracuse. We're Tupper Lake. We're a small community where everybody tries to get along. We may disagree, but neighbors still help neighbors. People work together. We could have put a business out up at Moody, Blue Jay Campsite. I mean, it never should have seen the light of day. It did. People don't care. Oh, well, so be it. You know, well, it upset enough people in this community. And there was no need for that. I'm being honest. I'm surprised the planning board, I'm told there were 7 people, only 1 wanted that in there, and the other 6 went along with it. Why? I was told that by somebody who was involved with it. They said, well, you know, we wanted everybody to have a say in what was being put forth. Well, then you agreed with it. Oh no, none of us agreed with it, only the one person. You know, those things gotta change. I honestly believe that if Booney and I are elected, it'll be a good thing for Tupper Lake. I really believe that it'll be a positive thing for Tupper Lake. And I guarantee you, we will get additional miles of trails.
I know it.
You bet, we will. So, but anyways, I would hope that you vote for me. I have a lot of experience in government, village, town, school. I'm very familiar with budgets. I'm also familiar with assessments and how assessments work and so forth as far as taxation. And I will serve the people well. Again, I made mistakes. We all make mistakes. But my record, I'm proud of it. I'm not ashamed of the record I had when I was in office in Tupper Lake. Not by any means. And all I ask is that you consider me, consider my running mate. One person alone isn't going to make a difference. It has to be the 2 of us to try to make any kind of headway whatsoever. I don't know why it just seems as if the board follows along, as if they're following a Pied Piper at times. So, and I don't mean that to be disrespectful. Maybe it sounded that way, but from the outside looking in, that is what it looks like, and it looks like that to a lot of people in the community, from what I hear. So, please, if you would consider me, that's all I can ask. I know some people will never vote for me in this community. I understand that, but I'm hopeful that
10 seconds.
I'm hopeful that a majority of you will vote for Booney and I. Thank you, and thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you very much. You know, I'd like to thank the candidates. We've heard some great comments in here. We've heard some just terrific sentiment. I just think we're very lucky as a community to have 4 people who are so interested in that position that we're going to have a great race here. And I would applaud all 4. Thank you very much. I also want to give a plug to my boy Ben who came and brought his sound equipment. Because I know everybody here hears very well. And I'd like to thank the KSC and Dave LeBlanc, who's the guardian of the KSC. I think he sleeps here. For being such a great host and for furnishing this place this evening. And please all get it. Go out and vote on November, whatever it is.
November 5th, Tuesday?
Second, wow, Mary.
3 weeks.
Mary, you've been studying a lot.
3 weeks.
Thank you all for coming.